Hey, welcome back to the Fight Death podcast. I'm your host, John, and today's episode is going to be a little different. I had the opportunity to sit down and interview Grace and Eden, the minds behind Abortion is a Black and White Issue. One of the interesting things about our conversation were the differences between the pro-life movement there where they are in the UK and here where I am in the United States. I hope you enjoy. All right, so I am here with Grace and Eden, who are together Black White Issue on Instagram and their blog, and they're going to tell you all about that kind of stuff. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining me today here on the Fight Death podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So whoever wants to start, maybe just introduce yourself and give us a little elevator pitch about why you're involved in the pro-life movement and like who you are, that kind of thing.
So my name's Grace. I live in Glasgow, which is kind of on the west coast of Scotland. And I am a co-founder of the anti-abortion platform Abortion is a Black and White Issue. Eden, do you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Eden. I'm originally from London, where I was born and raised, but I now live in Glasgow. Grace and I both work for a pro-life organisation there. And I also am a co-founder of the anti-abortion platform Abortion is a Black and White Issue. The way I got involved in the movement was really through my sister. Grace has heard this story a million times now. But basically, when I was 3, my parents found out that they were expecting. And they found out that their child had a very rare and serious condition called Patau syndrome. So the doctors advised my parents to abort, which they didn't do. And obviously Josephine was born. She lived past the life expectancy until she was almost 4, and she died. So she was my best friend in those 4 years that she was alive. And then growing up, getting into my teen years, I kept hearing from the media, from my friends, from society that people like her are better off dead than being given the chance at life. So that really kind of spurred me on to be so passionate about the pro-life cause and fighting against abortion, especially in the UK.
And obviously
Wow.
Eden has that kind of really emotional story that motivated her to get involved. But for me, really, there actually was nothing like that at all. Growing up in my house, my family were against abortion, but it was never really, no one ever actually spoke about it. So for me, growing up, it was just actually a conclusion that I came to on my own, that obviously it was normal to be against killing humans, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how common sense the position is when you just state it in, those kind of black and white terms.
Yeah, definitely.
So how did you then get involved, Grace? How did you get involved with Abortion as a Black and White Issue or any of your other pro-life activism?
So me and Eden, we had known each other for a couple of years before we started working for the same pro-life organisation. But then when we started working together and spending a lot of time together, we became really good friends, and we were passionate about pro-life issues. And we kind of noticed that there was kind of a gap in the social media market. There was kind of a growing number of anti-abortion youth, and we didn't really feel like they had a platform which accurately represented their generation. So then we thought, well, we're of that generation, so we might as well just go ahead and do it.
Love it.
Yeah, sorry, no. So, in the UK here, obviously the movement's completely different over here to what it is in the USA. But we have amazing resources, crisis pregnancy centres, post-abortive care, lots of pro-life organisations that are, battling legislation, campaigning, doing all the education work. But online, I think it's very, very important that you have a voice because you have such a loud, angry pro-abortion culture online. Who go onto these pages that are doing such good work to harass these groups and really put them down. And I think it really makes the movement, the pro-abortion movement, look bigger than it is, because they all get like, I don't know how to say it nicely, ballsy. They all get ballsy online and say stuff online and get more involved where they wouldn't normally in real life. So I think it's really, really important to have a platform that's going to stand up and kind of challenge that, and also be a loud voice, be edgy, be bold, be black and white, not have things sugar coated, but also make it look very appealing to the eyes as well. So that's kind of what me and Grace decided we wanted to do to combat that raging online pro-abortion culture.
Yeah, and just to add as well, I think obviously I'm not entirely sure what the situation would be in the States, but in the UK, abortion came into this country in 1967, and since then, despite like so many good pro-life efforts going on in this country, things have just kind of got increasingly worse and more radical over the years. And now me and Eden can kind of see that within our own generation, there is kind of an anti-abortion following, and it's becoming kind of ever more impatient with this kind of pro-abortion culture and policies, which are just getting worse and worse. So I think that's a reason why it is so good to have Black and White Issue, because we offer kind of harsh, humorous, dry content, which not actually a lot of other pro-life pages offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, y'all's content is very in your face, and that's something I really appreciate about it. So you say that there's a growing anti-abortion movement. Do you think that's the result of outreach? Do you think that's the result of, pro-choice people have fewer children on average? Do you think that's just a demographic shift? What's kind of the vibe there?
Mm-hmm. I think it's possibly a combination of lots of things. I think me and Eden have been interviewing students throughout the week, and one thing we keep going back to is that in the UK in 2018 there were only 8 pro-life university societies in this country, and now there's actually over 14. So you can see that there is a huge rise in anti-abortion activism within the younger generation. I think it's a whole combination. I think that, like I just said, I think that people are becoming more impatient. The pro-abortion culture is becoming more radical and in your face and openly violent. And I think people now are starting to get fed up with it. And, we have the technology, we have the social media platforms where we can now also be more kind of savvy and in your face and harsh about it. And I think this generation are just over it now, and we're going to do something about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think in the UK, the way our generation is kind of geared is very much suppressing other people's views if they don't align with their own. And so, as Grace said, we've had amazing growth of pro-life student activism on university campuses, but I think with that brings about this nasty, vicious pro-abortion culture, especially from people of our generation who feel that it's acceptable to silence others that they don't agree with. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And as well, this is kind of like maybe an off-topic point as such, because there is no statistics to back this up, but it is just an observation that obviously pro-abortion people will have less children than pro-lifers, so you will definitely see a kind of a demographic shift right there.
I mean, obviously, we're forced breeders, Grace. We want women to all be incubators. Yeah, mm-hmm. Of course, chained up, forcing them to reproduce.
You heard it here first, folks. Black and White Issue wants to chain women into wants all women chained in basements, forced to be nothing but incubators. That is exactly what they said. There's no necessary context to interpret it, anything like that.
No, the master plan has been exposed.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the maybe the broader pro-life movement in the UK, because I think a lot of my listeners are more US. A lot of my listeners are more in North America, Canada, and the US. So what is the goal? Is the goal of the movement over there also to make abortion illegal? What was the basis of like the decision in 1967? Was it legislation? Was it a judicial decision? Walk me through some of the history that that kind of thing.
Grace, do you want to go for the history?
Yes, no problem. So the UK was actually one of the first Western countries to introduce legalised abortion, and that happened through the 1967 Abortion Act. So kind of just as an overview, since then obviously Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, there's devolved powers, but within the whole of the United Kingdom, kind of minus in Northern Ireland right now, the abortion law remains the same. So that is abortion for any reason up until the 24th week of pregnancy, and then you can get an abortion up until birth if the mother's life is at risk or the child is suspected to be disabled. So that is quite a radical abortion law, and it was from that 1967 Abortion Act that the organisation that me and Eden both worked for was established. And that was established not only to combat abortion and to make it illegal, but also to kind of aim for a cultural shift where abortion was also made to be unthinkable.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything I can add to that.
Well, okay, so I think that we've got similar approaches, but we're coming at it from different angles because we have two different we're struggling against two different legal systems, right? So y'all's was made, in y'all's case, it was made illegal, or it was made legal rather, through an act of parliament.
Yeah.
Is the only way that you can overturn that another act of parliament?
I think that's a tricky question. I'm not actually 100%.
The simple answer is I don't know.
Didn't realize it was going to be a political quiz show, did ya?
Do you know what?
No,
I think it's
we
really
didn't. You should have warned us.
because Americans are very much politically minded. Like, a lot of Americans are very, very clued up on politics. And I noticed that when I was over there for the March for Life, there was a lot of politics involved. Over here in the UK, I don't think we know as much about politics as most, like, the average American would. So
However,
in our organisation...
Oh, sorry, Ethan, I thought you were done. Keep going.
Sorry. In our organisation, we do have people on the campaigns team, which isn't me and Grace. You can probably tell.
Yes, we actually have a really close friend and colleague who is from Boston, and we obviously work with her full time. So she's very politically minded, and she kind of talks us through the American political system quite a lot when needs be. But I think it would, obviously in the UK there's different stages, like you have the House of Commons and you have the House of Lords in those kinds of different stages. But it definitely would be an act of parliament. I'm just not sure about the intrinsic ins and outs of that.
That's interesting, because here it wasn't, there was no federal law making it legal. It was the Supreme Court decision that overturned all the state laws that made it illegal.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, can you expand on that and just kind of explain how it works there?
Sure. So in the states, we have a system that we call federalism, which is there's a strong central federal government, which is the president and the Senate and the House of Representatives that everybody kind of thinks of, and the Supreme Court. But then each state also has its own government, and each state so the federal government was governed for a long time by the U.S. Constitution, but that for a long time didn't apply against the states. And then there was an amendment, the 14th Amendment, that said, okay, all of the Bill of Rights and all of the Constitution now applies against the states as well. So the states can't make a law suppressing like free speech. That's our First Amendment. The U.S. Constitution guarantees a right to free speech, speech free from political consequences by either Congress or, through the 14th Amendment, one of the state governments. So all the states are under the 10th Amendment. All the states have what are called police powers, basically the right to, each state can define what crimes are. So Florida can have a different definition for murder than Georgia does, or than somewhere else does. Not that it's that different. It's just that because the states have adopted most of the common law from Britain, although that's changed over time. So it's very similar to like the traditional definition of murder. But if a state wants to define murder and then separate it into degrees, or if a state wants to define those different degrees as different offenses, like, the state has the right to do that, and the state has the right to like have police departments and enforce its own. There's no national police here that enforces national crimes. Well, I mean, there kind of is, but like the FBI doesn't come and arrest you for murder for a state offense. I mean, they can, but it's more complicated because there's two levels of government. But your local police department comes down to your house and knocks on your door and says, "Hey, you killed somebody." That's what happens.
Okay.
So with that background, all the states were able to say abortion is illegal under the 10th Amendment. Well, then in 1973, the Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade came along and said, all right, the states actually can't do that because the U.S. Constitution guarantees a right to abortion, even though it doesn't. It doesn't even guarantee a right to privacy. That's a long tradition of bad case law, but the Supreme Court said it did, and so the only way then to say that the Constitution doesn't guarantee a right to abortion is to turn around and overrule what the Supreme Court previously said. So that's why I think a lot of American pro-lifers are very keyed into this political process, because who's like Trump. A lot of people voted for Trump not because they liked him, but because they trusted him to appoint conservative judges to the Supreme Court, which would be it's one of the only ways, because Supreme Court appointments are for a lifetime. So it's one of the only ways to get a Supreme Court ruling overturned is to get different judges into the court. And right now, we've had Kavanaugh appointed, we had Gorsuch appointed, and now it looks like if Trump wins again, Ruth Bader Ginsburg she's very old. She's a very left-leaning justice, and so obviously nobody's wishing for her death, but if she dies or resigns during Trump's administration, then that'll be a third Supreme Court justice appointed by a conservative president, and so that would, or at least a third conservative Supreme Court justice appointed by an American president, and so that would greatly increase our chances of overturning Roe v. Wade if we can get the right court or the right case into the Supreme Court.
Interesting.
Gosh.
I hope that made sense.
It does make sense. There's a lot to get your head around, but it does make sense.
Yeah, it does.
Sorry, that was a lot of me talking and me not asking you questions.
No.
But with that framework, it seems like because you're dealing with legislation, that you're probably focused more on individual campaigns, which we do to some extent here, but I guess it's probably more of a focus over there.
Yeah, and as well, I think something that's actually kind of interesting and quite unique about the abortion law in the UK is that obviously the Abortion Act was an act of Parliament, but technically abortion is still within the criminal codes in our country. So there's grounds set out in the Abortion Act which deem it appropriate to have an abortion. So if you have an abortion out with these grounds and out with these terms, you can be seen in breach of the 1861 Offences Against the Person Act. So abortion isn't actually fully out of the criminal code. So that is one of the huge kind of pro-abortion campaigns that we've got going on in the UK to fully decriminalise abortion and lift it out of the criminal code.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So, but obviously, like, when you take it completely out of the criminal code, there's so many things that can go wrong. Like, you're kind of removing safeguards for women, and you're removing the safeguards from women who maybe be in abusive relationships, or they may be being coerced into the decision. So you kind of lift those safeguards if you take it out of the criminal codes.
So right now the criminal codes are prohibiting abortions under certain conditions.
Yeah, so right now the criminal it prohibits abortion unless it's under certain conditions, and those conditions are outlined in the 1967 Abortion Act.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah. And now I want to go back to the 1967 Abortion Act says that you can have an abortion after 24 weeks if the child is disabled.
Yeah, or suspected of being disabled, because obviously tests can't be accurate.
So what does it give a definition for, like, how do you know if what's reasonable grounds for suspicion that the child is disabled?
Yeah, well, obviously I think the words in is suspected fetal anomaly.
Anomaly.
Yeah, anomaly. But sorry. But yeah, obviously prenatal tests, especially for Down syndrome, are really, really common in the UK, and obviously that picks up on like Edwards syndrome, and I think Pato syndrome, what Eden's sister had as well. So obviously I think the test would be carried out, and if it's came back that the child is suspected of having some sort of fetal anomaly, then termination can be offered right up until birth.
Wow, that is really, really horrible.
Yeah, but it's really horrible.
We both we declined prenatal testing like that for both of my boys, precisely because like we didn't want, like if we have a Down's syndrome child, we're gonna love that child, and we don't want any sort of stigma. We don't want the doctor to treat the pregnancy any differently or anything like that. We had a great doctor, but I like, it's horrible that like these incredible medical advances are then being used to destroy human lives.
Well, it's being used to target them and then exterminate them,
to dehumanize them.
Yeah, there is actually a campaign going on right now in the United Kingdom, and I think it's being led. Is it? Can you remember her name? Is it Heidi?
Is it? I don't remember her name. Is it the downright discrimination or something?
It's called Downright Discrimination. I'm sure it's headed up by a woman called Heidi. However, I may be incorrect in that. And that's kind of trying to address right now the abortion law, because it's 24 weeks for any reason. But then suddenly, if your child is disabled, you can get rid of them right up until birth. So there is a campaign going on right now in the United Kingdom to try and combat that. However, the really unfortunate and kind of sick thing about it is that kind of pro-abortion legislators can just then look at that and then they'll say, okay, you know what, that is discrimination. It's up till birth for everyone. So that's kind of what we need to be careful about, because that could easily happen.
Yeah, that's wow. Let's pivot a little bit and talk a little bit more about what y'all do in the pro-life movement. Both if you're, I don't know if you're prohibited from talking about the organization that you work for, but if you're not, what do you do there? What kind of work are you doing? What's your day-to-day like? And then also with like Black White Issue, I want to return to that because I think you've made some really important points about how aggressive pro-abortion culture has become, and I want to jump back on that. But
Grace, do you want to go?
Yes. So the organisation that me and Eden work for, there is a London office, a Scottish office, and a Northern Ireland office. Me and Eden both work in the Scottish office, which is in Glasgow. So my role within that is a full-time communications officer. So the kind of, I will write up news articles, blogs, press releases. I will liaise with journalists and other communication officers, and I'm in charge of the social media accounts. So that's kind of creating and posting content, and that's me.
So I work as a youth and education officer, hence why I have absolutely no idea about all this politics stuff, because I just kind of stay out of that side of things. So I have two roles. So the youth side of things is I help organise youth events. Every year we have an annual pro-life youth conference, which we hold. We also have a roadshow for youth activism and outreach, which we do. We go around to 10 different cities in Scotland for a week during the summer, and we set up an information stall, an outreach stall, and we speak to people about abortion on the streets, which is amazing. We also try and do monthly stalls with that as well, but obviously because of the coronavirus we haven't been able to do that this year. With my education work, I go into all the schools that I'm invited in Scotland, and I give various presentations about different life issues, from abortion to euthanasia and everything in between. So we also have a primary school resource that I head up, and with that we go into primary schools and we talk to children about the beauty of life before birth. So nothing abortion related, but the kind of idea with that is if you can get children to understand their humanity in the womb and look at the development in the womb, so they have all the facts while they're young, hopefully they'll be more inclined to be pro-life by the time they get to secondary school. Because in secondary school, from what I've seen anyway, you go into the first year of secondary school and already the children are conditioned be pro-abortion. It's actually really, really scary. Even in religious schools that have, curriculum against that, they're very, very much abortion minded already, probably from stuff that they're seeing online from their friends and movies and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, just an interesting point actually, whilst you just said that, Eden, is that I've also done like a couple of school talks and stuff, and there's one set school talk for secondary school pupils, and this was maybe about a year ago. I went into a secondary school to deliver this presentation, and I had a third year class, so that's maybe like, what, 14, roughly about 14. They were 14 years old and they received it really well. They were completely on board. They were completely trying, like, kind of like, what are you trying to tell me? Of course, abortion's wrong. Why would you think I thought any differently? And that was all fantastic. And then 2 hours later, I gave the same presentation to a group of 6th-year pupils, and it was complete hostility. And you could see the complete shift in attitudes just within that tiny, like, 2 years. It was crazy.
Yeah, it is insane.
Yeah.
It is insane.
But in terms of like day-to-day life in the office, I kind of think whenever I meet someone and they ask me what I do, and I say I'm a pro-life campaigner and an anti-abortion activist, it's kind of like, oh, how is that a job? It's completely alien and crazy to them. But in day-to-day, it's just normal. It's like having any other job. I mean, Eden, both come into work and we get coffees and we work and then we go out on our lunch break and we go shopping after.
Unless I have a school to go to.
Yeah, unless you have a school.
But yeah.
So it's normal.
It's just like a normal job. It's weird. Pro-lifers are like normal people. What's up with that?
We're like normal people that wake up and have to hear crap that goes on in the world every single day. But other than that, everything's normal. And you just kind of have to like get used to the crap or block it out. So yeah, it's kind of a normal job, but also kind of not.
Yeah, every morning my mum always says to me, oh, Grace, is it going to be a busy day at work today? And I kind of think, oh, I'll need to see what kind of awful things people have done over the weekends.
Right.
So.
I'm going to go deal with some dismembered children. So
yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
whatever your day holds.
Exactly. Casual conversations about death all day, every day.
That's that's tough. Before we go on, actually, when you're dealing with that, what kind of self-care do you practice? Are either of you religious?
Shopping
that's a very
therapy.
personal question, I know, but if you are or aren't, or if you feel comfortable sharing, I ask because in the States here, I'd say probably 90%, 85, 90% of the pro-life movement is religious, and is somehow, tied to either the Catholic Church or some of the conservative Protestant denominations.
Yes. So I'm Catholic. I was born Catholic, so cradle Catholic. I wouldn't say fell away, but I would say fell away. Do you know what I mean? You kind of like lapsed a bit throughout my teenage years where I didn't really take it seriously, or I did the motions, but I wasn't really actually practicing anything. Came back to it my late teen years, and so that is really helpful, obviously, because I do think personally, for me, that there is a very spiritual side to this whole issue. So that's very comforting for me. And that kind of, apart from shopping, that's how I get my peace and relaxation.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same as Eden. I am a Catholic and I would never deny that. However, it's strange because in kind of what motivates me to end abortion, I don't really feel like religion has played a huge part in motivating me to try and stop like humans being cut up. It's just, even if you didn't have religion, of course it's wrong to cut up humans, but obviously having God there and stuff is obviously very comforting. But really what I think is probably the best thing is that I have Eden. I think having that, like, a one person who's really close to you and they fully get you and understand you, and agree with you. So having her there is a real rock. And then obviously I have like a really good boyfriend and family and stuff. So yeah, a lot of support.
Definitely. I would just basically mirror what Grace said, everything there.
And then obviously like there's
really nice
severe Five Guys emotional eating and shopping after work.
Yeah.
Five Guys burgers and fries?
Oh, yes.
Amazing.
Oh my god, y'all have that there?
Yes.
Yes.
We only when when I was over, we totally have it here. It's one of my favorite fast food joints.
So yum.
It is the
But
best.
when I was over in the UK, we were eating just local stuff.
Oh
'Cause
no.
Well, in Scotland there was a little less eating locally.
Wait, when you were in Scotland, did you have a pizza crunch?
No, I had Iron Brew a lot.
You didn't have. Wait, sorry. Just hold. No, wait. You didn't have a pizza crunch.
I did not have a pizza crunch.
Right, you need to come back now.
You need to come back.
You need to come back.
You need to come back.
Well, my wife has insisted that we will be back with the kids and take my family. So
Right, you need.
Yes,
we'll be back. So I'll have to try a pizza crunch.
Yes, you will. I'm not even joking. It will change your whole life. They don't have them here in England. And when I came up, Grace obviously introduced me to them. And honestly, it's like taking a slice of the best thing you could ever imagine and eating it. Kind of.
It literally is. It's the best.
What is it? Describe this dish for me.
So
diabetes on a plate.
It's difficult to describe in terms of because there's different standards of frying food. So it's kind of like a pizza, but it's not a pizza like you would get a Chicago Town or a Domino's or it's not that kind of pizza. It's like a chippy pizza. But then it's fried and then it's taken out of the fryer and then it's wrapped in batter and then it's chucked back into the fryer. And then you take it out and you salt it and vinegar it, and it's amazing.
It is amazing.
That sounds really, really, really good for your soul and really, really, really bad for your body.
Yes.
So at the end of a long day, it's a little retail therapy and a pizza crunch.
And a pizza crunch. Yes, Grace and I will go out, we'll go into the center of town, we'll have a shop around, buy some unnecessary stuff, and then go and get a pizza crunch. Sit on this little designated spot we sit in, have that, and then go our separate ways until the next.
That's the self-care routine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I love it. Oh man, you mentioned that you made Black and White Issue because you're dealing with this more kind of outspoken, like the shout your abortion crowd, but also the people who are not just. So in the States for a long time, the Democrats, the phrase was safe, legal, and rare.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That they wanted abortions to be safe, legal, and rare. Of course, that was always a lie, but that has shifted here, and it sounds like there as well, from safe, legal, and rare to shout your abortion to this kind of celebration of abortion.
Yeah, thank God for your abortion. They're like the worst.
Oh, they just commented on one of my Instagram posts. I was surprised.
Well, they do that and then they block you. So they've done that with a couple of ours, but then straight after blocked us. It's just ridiculous. I really can't stand
I
them.
really don't even like to give them the attention because it's so clear that they're just trying to provoke a reaction out of people and being so controversial and having events in churches and dressing up religiously and stuff. It's so clear that they are just all out for that reaction, and it's quite pathetic. It's genuinely pathetic. So I don't even really give them attention on social media at all because that is exactly what they want.
Probably the move. I commented back. I fed the troll.
Yeah, fight back.
But
take the offense, not the defense, as Grace and I say.
And is that the goal with Black and White Issue, is to get more play the offense and less of the defense?
Yes. We always go out the pro-life movement for so many years in the UK has gone like lambs to a slaughter to every event, getting harassed, shouted at, things thrown on them. And I think now we need to start putting our foot down and saying, actually, no, we've had enough, and standing up and actually saying something back rather than just being, oh, yes, sorry, yes, peace and love and kindness and stuff, which is great. That stuff is great. But all the time, I mean, you need to have a balance.
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously that whole kind of love and peace and acceptance and kindness and charity, that is definitely an approach that works for some people 100%. And the kinds of the pro-lifers who use that approach, of course, their intentions are good, they're doing fantastic work, but we just kind of feel that now there's that kind of gap where the pro-abortion culture has become so extreme. And in the UK, it doesn't really seem like there's that kind of loud voice shouting back at them. So we became the right voice.
And is is that your main goal, is to be a loud voice shouting back, or are there other online activities that you participate in to kind of keep fighting?
Well, I kind of think one of the main aims for Black and White Issue is certainly to try and mobilize and motivate other people to do the same. I think that's one of the main aims of the page, is to motivate all those other young people who they are anti-abortion, but they don't know how to say it and they don't know how to kind of fight back in those kinds of terms.
Yeah, definitely. So we actually run multiple pro-life pages with different content on. Our most public one being abortion, it's a black and white issue. And whilst the front of our page, at the front of it is very much, sassy graphics, getting other pro-life people to get involved in the comments and stuff. We also do actually have really, really good discussions and conversations with people in private message. And I always say this, if a pro-abortion person is really interested in having a discussion and really interested and open to having a conversation, they're not going to do it in the comments. They're going to DM you, they're going to email you, they're going to contact you privately and not do it in the comment section. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with Black and White Issue, where we can refer people onto post-abortion counselling services, where we forward people onto crisis pregnancy centres. But at the front of it all, it doesn't look like we do anything like that. It just kind of looks like we're just standing up and saying it how it is. But there is a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we do as well.
Yeah, that's I think that's a lot of the pro-life movement, is that there's a very visible, like, vocal section, but then there's also so much work being done to help women, either empower women so that they don't feel any sort of need to choose abortion, or women who have chosen abortion and regret it, to help them the post-abortive care. It's really cool that you have the opportunity to do stuff like that. I am gonna actually just pull up a question from Instagram too. I popped that poll up a few minutes before we started this, and so one user asked about the mental health after dealing with macabre abortionists, and so we already kind of addressed that. Another user asks, how do you feel about women that had an abortion and then voiced their regret for the rest of their lives?
Sorry, could you say that one more time? For some reason it cut out on my computer.
Yeah, sorry. So how do you feel about women who had an abortion and then turn around and voice their regret for the rest of their lives?
Well, oh, sorry, Grace. Right, I'm just going to head this one off. So one of my absolute, apart from Grace, obviously, and a few other people, but one of my absolute pro-life heroes is a woman who is a post-abortive mother of two. She's from Birmingham, over here in England. Her name is Rachel, and she is one of the most inspiring, amazing women I've ever heard speak and listened to and actually had a conversation with. She's honestly just like the most down-to-earth, genuine person who is really, really real, and she puts the way she had her abortions in very, very black and white terms. So the way that I feel about women who've had abortions, and even if women don't have regrets after abortions, is, you always address that with compassion. For me, that's how I address that, and especially when dialoguing face to face. It's a lot harder online to do that, obviously, but face to face, especially, you should always treat someone who's had an abortion with compassion, no matter if they feel regret or if they don't feel regret. Because more often than not, they felt that was their only choice, and they weren't provided with the support system they needed from either their partner, their friends, their family, their careers, their education system, all of that. So they've been failed in a way by society. So I think it's really, really, really important to recognize that. And I do think it's also important to be black and white about the fact that, having an abortion does mean that you've killed your child. Because unless they do take responsibility and understand that that is something that they have done, then I don't think there's any way they'll be able to move forward and forgive themselves, because they're not recognizing something they've done. So for me, I would always address it with compassion. Online, it is very difficult to come across compassionate to somebody who said, yeah, I had an abortion, lol. And it is very frustrating. And again, online, there is a very different tone from pro-abortion side, and I think also from pro-life side as well. But certainly face-to-face and with outreach and activism, where we're dialoguing with people and speaking to people, it is very important to show that compassionate side.
Yeah, I would completely agree with what Ethan just said. You would always address a situation like that with compassion. But I do think as well that these women that have had abortions earlier in their lives and then they speak out about it, I think it's incredibly brave because, I think it's more than likely that when a woman has an abortion, it's not something that you really tell people about. It's like, so the fact that she's then came out and she's kind of telling the world that she had an abortion, and then she's also speaking about the regret, and she would have a whole kind, pro-abortion activists, they treat women who speak about abortion regret terribly. Like they completely devalue anything that they have to say about it, and it's horrendous. So I really think they're coming out and they're speaking against the pro-abortion culture, which is shouting back on them, saying that their regret isn't valid, their emotions aren't valid, their experience isn't valid. So it is an incredibly brave thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that women who are, I know a lot of women who are post-abortive.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot at in the church here. I'm not Catholic, but in the church here, there are a lot of post-abortive women who that's how they found the church, was through a crisis pregnancy center, or you have friends, and only one of the post-abortive women that I know does not express regret.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like actively talks about her abortion as if it were a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
To try to, she's like a shout your abortion type person.
Yeah.
But I think that it's very important that the pro-life movement give these women a voice and like you say, validate their experience. I think
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%.
Like one of the things that really bothers me. I have a number of friends, not a lot, but a number of friends who have miscarried, and a lot of them have to step away from online stuff because what the other side is essentially saying is all of your grief over losing your child is irrational and misplaced because it was just a clump of cells.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think more and more, especially as this kind of like bro choice movement grows, I think more and more we're going to see the whole pro-abortion myth that they care about women kind of crumble, and the pro-life movement needs to be there to stand up and catch those women who are now falling because the foundation's been ripped out from under them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Let me ask you a final question. And I really appreciate y'all been hanging out with me for we talked for a little while before the recording started, so y'all have been hanging out with me for almost an hour, and I know y'all have had a long day, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Let me just ask you, what is your least favorite pro-choice argument that you hear?
Least favorite? Flipping it.
Right, give me like 10 seconds to think about this. Maybe a pause.
Yeah, a little pause to gather. I thought the least favorite pro-choice argument. Do you mean least favorite is in just the most disliked, or the one that's easiest to argue, or the one that's hardest to argue, or just in general?
I'm gonna let you interpret that question as you will. I'm not gonna offer any more guidance than that.
Oh, something that I find incredibly stupid is this annoying burning IVF analogy, because it's not just the analogy itself, it's when they slam it down on social media and then comment like, oh, I bet you've never heard this one before. Like, it's that whole attitude of them saying that stupid analogy and thinking that, they've completely blown it out the water and no one has ever came across this before. I think that's probably something like the most stupid one. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, if they actually believe that we've never heard this before. So
right,
it's that one.
It's so so do you save the embryos or do you save the infant?
We save the infant.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're not really pro-life. Boy, wow. If you were pro-life, you would be a utilitarian like me and recognize that saving 1,000 lives is better than saving one.
Oh, but yeah, that was brilliant. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. So that's my.
That one.
I think apart from like all the, but what if it's disabled? Because obviously that's quite personal. Apart from that, I think it would have to be, oh, well, how many kids have you foster cared for? Oh, well, how many kids have you adopted? It's like, listen, I don't have to house every rescued victim of sex trafficking to condemn abuse. And I don't have to house every homeless person I see to fight against poverty. And guess what? I don't have to house every single child in foster care to disagree with killing them in the womb. Like, that annoys me.
Right. That one's great because it's like, all right, have you personally brought into your house every insert category of oppressed person here? No, then you don't have a right to speak out against oppression.
It's just ridiculous.
Okay, so like literally nobody can have a moral opinion on any of these bad things in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody.
Mm-hmm. Can I just ask what your one is?
I actually think that it's the IVF clinic one. Or my least favorite to hear. So I'm gonna interpret my own question now. If it's the one that I most dislike or find the most annoying, it's definitely the IVF clinic one. My least favorite one to discuss is the what about exceptions for rape?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just like you've got to be really, really sharp and really in tune with what the other person is arguing for to be able to, because if they're, the way that I see that is like rape victims don't come out good either way. They're always going to suffer. And if you're using them to justify the, elective abortions, that's like further, like that's you're parasitizing their trauma and using it to further more trauma for other people. And it's just, it really frustrates me and makes me sick to my stomach when people use rape victims like that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I like to call people out as well. I like to say, why are you trivializing such a traumatic experience for a woman to push forward your pro-abortion ideology? Like, why do you think that that's acceptable for you to do? Yeah, it's terrible.
Well, I want to say thank you very much, ladies, for spending your evening. This was my afternoon, so I still have stuff to go do today, and I'm sure that y'all are ready to.
Well, the Pizza Crunch shop is closed obviously because of lockdown, so this is our other therapy.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad that I could contribute then.
Letting it all out.
Thank you for venting with us. So, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, what is the best place to go?
Our website. So we have a website, www.blackwhiteissue.com, and it has a home section, an about section, a blog section, and then it has links to all of our socials on it as well. So if anyone wants to go to our website and check us out, that would be good. Best place.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I am going to put your links to your social media, but also to your website in the show notes. So that will be shared. So listener, wherever you are, however you are listening, you can find all that stuff in the show notes.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. Honestly, it's been amazing and lovely speaking to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you, ladies. I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Fight Death podcast. For more information about the work Grace and Eden are doing, you can check the show notes or go to blackwhiteissue.com. For more information about what I am doing, you can check out fightdeathpodcast.com. There you'll find my blog as well as other pro-life resources. If you have questions, comments, objections that you would like answered on the show, subjects you'd like me to cover, people you'd like me to interview, anything like that, you can get in touch with me, John, JOHN, at fightdeathpodcast.com is my email. I check that pretty regularly. Or you can reach out to me through Facebook, facebook.com/fightdeath. That is all for today, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Fight Death podcast. Thanks for listening.